of luterations. Part 3 is here. A quick one just to see what's going on with the neck and trying to clean this dirt off. So I'll give you a quick example of where we're at. This is what the neck looks like. Goo and gunk all around. The frets are quite damaged. These have already been polished here, and these obviously have not. I just wanted to show you the difference. And what we're going to do today is very quickly just show how we can get from this to this, to get a really nice kind of clean neck back. Now the other things have already been done to the neck. I've already sanded the majority down to the wood. This neck is surprisingly good. It is absolutely straight. It is wonderful. So the thing that we need to do here is a few fold. So number one, we need to clean the frets. Once we clean the frets, we can take one of these gauges and straighten the neck out with a truss rod completely. Once we've got the neck straight, we can then start doing all the fretwork that needs to be done. So that's why we first need to clean the frets so that the gauge actually hits the wood full on instead of on the dirt. That way we can make sure it's all perfect. So what we're going to do quickly is just clean these last frets and go from there. Just looking for my... Here it is. So the simplest way of doing this is by using something that is not going to put anything onto your fretboard, which will stay. In this case, I have tried and tested straight on every day. This is not turpentine as such. This is actually, I know things are so weirdly labeled nowadays, but this is not turpentine. It is actually thinners. And using something that is not oil based so that it really just evaporates once it's done. It doesn't leave any residue on the wood. You've got to be a little bit heavy handed with some of this gunk. But the beautiful thing about doing this is you do it a little bit and then the gunk starts slowly disappearing, and you'll notice that, see, once you go with it again, it's gone. And use some sort of being a ventilated area when doing this, because these thinners obviously has quite a whiff to it. It's not good for you. I've got the window open, so don't be surprised if you hear a cat meowing, because it's meowing at me because it's a pain in the arse. So this gunk must have been here for 200 years or something. Whoever had this guitar must have thought, well, why should I ever clean a fretboard? Seems like such a stupid thing to do. But this fretboard is in a state and a half. And what I'm also doing is, as I'm cleaning this fretboard here, I'm pushing my nail behind it and right up to the thread, so that we get as much gunk from under the frets itself and beside the frets, because that is an area which tends to be quite neglected. I want this fretboard squeaky clean, because once that's done, this fretboard will not just look the business, but also be the business. So there is literally not much more that needs to be done to this. We're now at a point where we can dry some of this off. It'll evaporate anyway, but if you dry it off, you can go back and see the spots that you've missed. What we're after with this guitar is not quality parts or trying to be all fancy. There's a fabulous video that's been going on at the moment by Crimson Guitars, and they have bought a cheap kit guitar, and they are literally using their absolute genius luthier skills to completely rebuild it and make it an absolute stunning piece of kit that is not even remotely what we are after. What we are after is trying to get a guitar out of this which is reliable and sounds great. So tone and reliability. We're not trying to make a guitar which we can sell again for £1,000. So you can see now the difference between what it was and what it is now. It's a complete transformation. Now we have got still a few problems here. We've got the frets which are a bit worn. So what we're going to do first is actually get this neck straight. Now I've already had a look at the fret and it is far from bent. It is actually a very nice neck. I don't know why the neck is so good and the rest of the guitar is so shit. But the best way to do this is by using one of these. Now Crimson Guitar sells a better version of this, but this one is from GMW and it was I think £19. So when you put this down, it goes in between the frets. So this has got the Fender scale length and the Gibson scale length 2475. The Crimson Guitar ones have all three scalings. So they've got the Fender, PRS, and the Fender and the Gibson scalings. So if you want to see if this is straight or not, the best thing is to do it with light. So you put your gauge in the middle and then you shine a light behind. I don't know if you can see that. And then you look this way to see if you can see the light. So we can see here there will be a little bit of light shining. Can you see that? The light shining through the depression there between the frets. So we know that it is bent, it is bowing a little bit. Now if you ever want to buy a nice little truss rod tool, don't bother, just buy something from IKEA. All the truss rod tools I've bought so far have been stripped. This one has been the most reliable ever. So what I'm first quickly going to do is just turn this truss rod to get this neck as straight as we can. Now another thing that gives me hope for this guitar build is that the truss rod is really smooth. Usually the cheap guitars have got some ridiculously awful truss rods in them, and it's actually really hard to turn. So there must be some shit going on inside of them. This one, however, is really nice and smooth. I'm just trying to see how we're getting on with this guy. So I managed to get the truss rod as straight as possible, so there is now hardly any visible light. Coming through. Yeah, it is pretty straight. I'm absolutely happy with that. Okay, so that means we now have a straight truss rod, which have a straight neck. So the next thing that we can obviously see now is how straight our frets are actually, and I believe that that is going to be our biggest issue here. This is not the best way to check them, but they actually look pretty okay as well. I don't know. However, a lot of this is going to change because if you look closely, these frets have all been damaged. These are actually nice big frets. So what we're going to do is, if we already started here, is I'm going to flatten the frets. And what's going to happen with the frets is this. When you do it the way I'm going to do it, if you look at the frets like that, you've got your guitar here, and then the fret comes out like this, obviously. And once you start filing them down, you're basically filing the top off. So that means your fret will start from the side, will look like this. It's like a flat top. Now that apparently is not the end of the world, but we would like to crown them afterwards. So that means that they'll be a little bit smaller like that. So one of the ways we can make sure that these frets are, after they've been leveled as such, that they are equal from this side all the way to that side, is by looking at the top. Once it creates this flat top, this flat top is a kind of a guide of how straight it is, because if you look at the fret now from the top, instead of the fret looking something like this, it will actually start looking like this. There will be this flat piece will be here. So you can now see if this is nice and parallel. And when that's nice and parallel, you kind of know that you've done a half decent job of it. Okay, so next will be getting the frets level.